Welcome everybody to the first meeting of the Bristol and Pentagon Cities Council for 2025. The overall mission of the CPCC is to provide with staff support, periodic monitoring, evaluation, and identification of emerging issues and potential solutions in all dimensions of implementing the Crystal City Sector Plan, the Pentagon City Sector Plan to assure achievement of the plan's goals and objectives over the life of the plans. Our quorum is 9 people, and we are right at 9, so we're good to go, make decisions, and so forth. We're holding this virtual meeting. Carol Fuller might join tonight remotely, and I think, let's see, can we see who else we have online? I think Emily thought she'd be able to join. No, I don't see. Okay.
Hey, Mike.
We're holding this virtual meeting in accordance with the CPCC union policy adopted 13 April 2023. And tonight we have a light agenda. Matt will go over some development updates. We've got a discussion of the impending 12th Street closure to make room for the transit way. We'll look at the proposed county budget for some issues that might impact our area. And then we'll just talk generally about the federal downsizing impact we've seen so far and get people's thoughts on what kind of impacts we might be looking for and when they might come to pass. Okay. Matt, would you like to start off with the development updates?
Yes, and just share my screen first. Hi everybody, good evening. This is just a similar format that we use every time we meet, just to go over and track the status of various projects. This is going to look very familiar to the version you saw in December. Not too much activity or significant updates since that time. Again, the organization of projects mirrors what the county utilizes when receiving applications, so kind of tracking from a conceptual proposal to a preliminary, and finally the final site plan, final being the one that is ready for public review and typically going into the site plan review committee process. So what we've tried is to, and this probably looks much better for people online, is track all the approvals. So you can see here, the most recent one that was added was the Melwood application from February. So that's number 18 on the map. So these are just the approvals. And then if we look at the next slide, which is all the active applications, you can see here from left to right, 19, 20, and 21. Of those 3, only 19, the River House application is currently moving forward. The other 2 have kind of stalled, and we're just waiting for the applicants to indicate when they're ready to move forward. But River House has submitted a major site plan update to us. So that's going to take a few weeks for us to review and assess, but we don't have any specific dates yet in terms of meetings, and we're going to follow up with the SPRC on that one. But it's really just those 3. There's no other new applications that have been filed that we're tracking at the moment. So you can see here in terms of the status, once staff has a chance to review the River House application, we'll be able to get a better sense of when the SPRC meetings might begin. Because of a substantial change in that proposal, those meetings are going to kind of have to restart in a way. So we'll definitely be kind of heading well into the fall season in terms of that review process. Beyond the other 2 that I mentioned, Met Park, this was done before the weekend. They were approved on Saturday. This was the relocation of the community high school into the Met Park building. So that is approved and moving forward. And I think that should do it. Again, the summary slide of tracking different proposals. You've all seen that. We'll continue to update that as projects come in. Any questions on those? While we have it up.
Yeah, on approved site plans, there was something that came in front of the board about having to get reapprovals if they time out.
Yes.
And do we have any in the Crystal City, Pentagon City that are have to be renewed by the applicant?
They're really everywhere in the county. So we actually have our current planning team that's been tracking a lot of those. They should be providing some updates in terms of what the county might be doing and what individual applicants might be doing as well. It is not uncommon from some applicants, because they already indicated to us that they may not be interested in renewing. I'm not sure how many of those fall to National Landing area, but that's something I can confirm.
Yeah. Are there costs associated with getting renewal, or is it mostly just an administrative process?
It's mostly administrative, depending on how much time has gone by. Every now and then we do update the condition language, bring those up to speed. But part of what is a common factor that we've learned from several applicants, actually not on this quarter, but others, is that, is that the minute you are approved as a site plan, the county taxes you at that density as a property owner.
Okay.
And if you don't proceed immediately to construction, you still have your old building stock, which are being taxed at a much higher rate, which is only sustainable for so long.
Right.
So I think that's a economic feasibility debate they're having in terms of, can I keep paying this, or at what point does it not make sense to keep the entitlements anymore?
Have you heard, actually, following up on the question, any direction from county leadership about how they kind of are considering the economic situation and flexibilities and being, it's always interesting to see when those come up before the board, right? It's pushback, why is it taken, what are the situations, are the site conditions still right or not? I imagine there may be more flexibility given the many different economic events, but I wonder if the board or the county leadership has indicated any direction.
I mean, thus far, I've seen flexibility in not imposing significant condition language changes. There are instances where certain standards, policies have been updated, and they represent now something much more stringent, where if something like that were to be imposed, the approved building and the plans that we have as they were may no longer be feasible if we have to now, or the applicant has to respond to these new standards, which are prescribed in the condition language. So that's usually something that NAOP and current planning team has been discussing about if we're trying to, because the state is no longer automatically renewing some of these, where can we have some flexibility? And a lot of it has to do with some site plans are coming up for like their third renew. So just at that 3-year mark where things just haven't progressed the way we thought. It's their first renewal. So it is a case by case. Yes.
I have a question. I just asked Mike because I wasn't new to this, not sure of the format and everything, but he said it'd be okay. When we're talking about development, we're consistent. I'm going to be consistent, right? Schools, parks, all the things that sort of go on with development. There was a report last fall from CPCC, and that was included a lot of requests or desires for seeing the status of some of the infrastructure that needs to be put together for the community. And so it was something I've been wondering for a while at our last meeting, I think, like, what's up with that? And will that be responded to? Is there going to be planning for the area in terms of those public facility items?
So a lot of that was passed on to the relative agencies, including the county manager's office, APS.
Oh yeah, we had that conversation. Yeah.
I've not heard anything from APS in terms of facilities. Closest, I think, meaningful dialogue was months ago, last summer, maybe last fall, when we were discussing the library in Crystal City and what the future of that would be. And we're trying to carry over the funding from JBD Smith's site plan contributions. So again, that ball is in the court of manager's office and the library staff, which are, I think, still undertaking a larger countywide review of their libraries. So this is somewhere, I think, in that portfolio there. But nonetheless, I think it's still helpful for this group to continue to signal if time has gone by, we've not heard. I'm happy to relay information and make sure the right people hear it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point. So we can request a status then. Okay. Good, thanks, Susan.
thank you.
Rob, is there any impacts on like, Crystal City or DCA or anything that start to ripple based on any of these things slowing down?
Any of the development projects?
Yeah.
Slowing down? I mean, just the implementation of the vision and sector plan.
Right, but there's no
Yeah,
dependence.
CC to DCA is fully funded.
Oh, are you
No.
talking about CC to DCA?
Yeah.
Specifically? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
There's no development. There's no new development integrated with the
Route
intersection of it.
Route 1 still not fully funded.
Great.
So there could be an argument that a slowdown in development might impact kind of the allocation of additional funding dollars to Route 1, given that some of the justification around that include on additional development that would increase real estate taxes. But no, second metro entrance fully funded, CC to DCA fully funded, Transit Way stages of funding. So if a project's fully funded and not reliant on developer contributions, which none of the big infrastructure projects, except for parks and stuff, those should be able to,
Okay, great.
unless there's a revisiting by Arlington County on the CIP or something.
The only infrastructure project I think that does impact CC to DCA that is not fully funded is VRE.
Yes.
That's got 20 million and it's basically design money, design and engineering money. They've not funded it.
Is that
Construction,
a funding relationship or a schedule?
it's funding.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't, that not security funding.
In terms of the impact of CC.
It could, because it's the entrance.
Right.
Right. Good. Any other questions? Okay, move to our next topic. And that is the 12th Street closure.
We have Diana on the call, finishing the presentation she can share. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, thank you. So let me share my screen. All right, good evening. My name is Diana Isasa with the Transit Bureau. I will be walking you through the construction update on the Transitway extension to Pentagon City project. All right. So I would like to start with a project overview. This project is being designed, built, and built in 3 separate phases. The first phase is segment 1, which was completed back in 2023. We added 2 new transit stations along Crystal Drive and 12th Street. The second segment is segment 2A, which covers 12th Street from East to Fern, and we are soon to start construction. Real general as project objectives and the scope of work. This corridor is designed to prioritize transit service and pedestrian access and continue providing the frequent, reliable transit service to meet current needs and future demand. This extension of the Transitway is a continuation of the CCPY just connecting to Pentagon City. As part of the scope of work, we are going to be adding 2 new median Transitway stations. They look very similar to the stations on Crystal Drive and 18th Street. There will be new dedicated bus-only lanes on both directions, a new traffic signal on Elm Street. There will also be multiple pedestrian and accessibility improvements along the corridor. All sidewalk ramps along the corridor will be improved to meet ADA compliance. There will be new pedestrian signals, The crosswalks will be redirected and there will be new curb extensions to provide shorter and safer pedestrian crosses and access to the stations, as well as street improvements such as new stormwater structures, and there will be new regrading and the paving of 12th Street on those two blocks to improve water drainage along the street, which has been an issue during the recent years. There'll be new pavement markings and all four signals on 12th Street and Fern Street will be upgraded. Okay. Now let's move into a construction update. This is an overview of the 12th Street corridor, moving from east to west, starting on East Street and 12th. As you can see, the new bus-only lanes were going to be incorporated, as well as a left turn pocket on East Street. Moving on to the intersection of 12th Street and South Elm, a new traffic signal will be added. There will be this is an aerial view. There will be the two new median stations, as well as dedicated bus lanes only. And then the intersection of 12th Street and Fern, all four signals will be upgraded, bus only marking lanes. And then continuing along 12th Street towards South Hayes Street, the bus only lane will continue. All right, these are our completed milestones. So there's been a lot of activities since we completed the first segment back in fall 2023. In spring 2024, we completed the design of segment 2A, which again, it covers 12th Street from East to Fern. On November of 2024, we also Penn Place completed the underground utilities work. That was very important for them to complete the work before we could start the construction of this segment. During that time, we worked on the procurement process. And finally, in January of this year, we completed our procurement process and a general contractor was selected. This is a timeline of the segment 2 of the Transway extension. Right now, we are working with the contractor on pre-construction activities. They are obtaining all the permits, getting the submittals approved before they can mobilize on site. Right now, it's looking probably by the end of March, beginning of April. Before the contractor mobilize, we'll be notifying the public about the upcoming mobilization. The construction is anticipated to take 12 months. So we're looking approximately to April 2026. And then from that point, there will be a couple of weeks to coordinate operations with WMATA so we can bring segment 1 online and then connect it to segment 2A and initiate operations, the Metroway operations. So we're looking to an anticipated start operations in summer 2026. This is our proposed maintenance of traffic. The proposed maintenance of traffic requires the temporary closure of these two blocks for approximately 12 months. The purpose of this is to accomplish various phases of construction. The design team explored the option of building the Transway extension in phases. However, we did run an analysis with a consultant, and it showed that trying to have an MOT that is picked up every day and then moved around will in fact make the traffic congestion worse, and then also be a potential risk to the safety of pedestrians. As a result, the recommendation of the team was the full road closure. This was determined to be the safer and more efficient approach at this time. Talking to our traffic and operations team, they're going to be closely looking at the timing and phasing of the signals on Fern and East Street, so they can adjust it to make sure they can, to provide a better management of traffic patterns in the area. The alternative routes and the detour signage will be provided in advance. So that will come first before the road is closed. And We also, fire and police department will always have access to 12th Street during the closure. The pedestrian flow will be redirected to prevent conflicts with the work zone, and the south sidewalk will remain open at all times to ensure that there is access to businesses and residential buildings. Looking into communications, we will be providing updates on the county website. There is also the county has a list of stakeholders for direct messages to any residents or buildings that could be impacted by the closure. We will also be providing updates through the DES transportation newsletter, as well as social media, Nextdoor, and other Instagram, I guess. Also, I distributed these flyers back in February 27th. I had the opportunity to talk to businesses and property managers about the closure. We will also be installing some yard signs with a QR code where people can check the updates on the project, and also my contact information is there if there are any questions. And these are some renders of the how we envision the transitway will look after the construction is completed. So this is a view on 12th Street and Southeast. As we can see, the continuation of the bus-only lanes and the median stations. This is 12th Street and South Elm Street. This is looking eastbound, also 12th Street and South Elm. And this is 12th Street and Fern Street. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Jeff.
The transitway is not anticipated to do any work on the pedestrian infrastructure, the sidewalks on the north and south sides. Is that correct?
The south sidewalk will remain open. The north sidewalk right in front of Penn Place development, that will remain closed.
But any redevelopment of the pedestrian infrastructure will have to occur as part of other project work?
On the north curb?
Well, yes. In other words, when the 12th Street is completed, will there be a sidewalk on the north side?
Yes, there will be a sidewalk.
Okay, well that,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so that's going to be built by the county, not by Amazon when they build Penn Place? Who does
So
that?
they will improve the sidewalk. At this time, we will be tying to the curb, existing curb. So it will look just like it looks right now until they come and redevelop.
Okay, so right now it's just asphalt. So it's all right. So that condition will remain until Penn Place is developed.
Well, just for clarification, I think I'm interpreting this as the width of it might remain. Diane, do you want to mention what material the sidewalk will be on the north side of 12th when you guys are done?
It will remain as the existing condition as it is right now.
Because that's.
It's not concrete. Yeah, it's a path, like an asphalt path.
And then I was just going to say on the south side, there's some deteriorating conditions on the curb where the sidewalk is, because I walk that all the time. I can see kind of bricks that are falling in and sinking. There's some subsidence. And if we're going to have a lot more pedestrian activity there, people duck out of each other's way, people are walking dogs. That's going to be an important kind of pedestrian. There's going to be a lot more pedestrians moving through because they don't have the other side. So looking at kind of clear widths, and I know Amazon, Whole Foods has that whole area where they have basically a kind of fenced off area that kind of narrows it. I think we should look at trying to make that as clear as possible during construction.
That's a good recommendation. Thank you.
One more question.
Yeah.
When the livability people met with David Smith. They said that they are about ready to tackle the damaged sidewalk. And they hope to get it fixed before this construction starts. They know that it's important. I'm sure Diana knows that as well. It's a critical piece, but they don't know what's wrong with it yet.
Okay.
I mean, it's a major problem. It's been a major problem for years. It's getting worse. It's literally
Yeah.
bad,
Yeah.
and the bricks are breaking. So hopefully that'll be worked out. I have a whole bunch of questions, Diana. So if I'm understanding your slides, Hayes Street, the second section on 12 between Fern and Hayes is not going to be closed ever for this?
I couldn't hear you well.
Are you closing the section of 12 between Fern and Hayes at all for the start?
No, with this project. No, with
It's
this.
mainly just paint.
Correct.
Okay. Next question. Your slide says pedestrian flow redirected.
Mhm.
What does that mean?
So as part of the plan is upgrading every ramp on the sidewalks on those 2 blocks on the south side. So while we're working along these ramps, the pedestrian traffic will have to be redirected around it. But we will always provide. Excuse me?
They can still use the south side sidewalk even though you're redoing the, okay, well, good luck with that.
Sometimes they're gonna be redirected on the street, but the street is gonna be closed during construction. So there will be a safe space provided for the pedestrians to go around.
Okay. 2 more questions. The 2 new bus stations that one on Crystal Drive, one on 12, when are those going to open? Is it waiting for the completion of this part?
Correct.
Okay, so in a year or so, maybe.
Yeah, we need to complete these 2 stations for WMATA to operate the system.
Okay, and I thank the bid for the beautiful artwork around that. My final question is what your actual vehicular MOT plan is. I thought I heard of 13th Street and Army Navy Drive, and I don't think 13th Street is a good option. It's a major loading zone. There's a huge amount of pedestrian activity there, and there's no traffic light at Fern and 13th. So it's going to be very hard for people to go out on Fern. So 15th would make sense. I mean, maybe if people are going that way. But I don't think 13th is a good option. Thank you. And have you decided yet?
Excuse me,
Which
can you
streets
repeat the
you would
question?
recommend people take?
Yeah, right now I can bring the image back. Let me find it. The recommendation at the moment is detour the vehicles on 13th Street, go around onto Fern, and then continue on 12th Street, as well as using Army Navy Drive.
We encourage you not to do that. It'll be a mess. I mean, there's major truck traffic already on 13th, and it's a major pedestrian pathway in there. So you want to not have a lot of traffic there. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll look into it.
Thank you.
Got one more question here.
Ben.
I agree very much with Pam that 13th Street is a poor alternative, and 15th Street would be better. Could you imagine a lot of people hearing about this would be surprised, right, that this wasn't coordinated with the kind of utility work that finished up? Maybe, I don't know, however it was 3-ish months ago, that was also pretty disruptive and closing down, tearing it up. Could you kind of walk through why it wasn't able to do both at the same time, and whether this also has utility work associated with it, or if it's just surface kind of infrastructure development?
Most of the utility work that we'll be doing is stern drainage infrastructures. There is not a lot of excavation on this project. Now, during the last multiple years, we've been coordinated with Penn Place on how better have access to 12th Street and implement both projects. This the way that this project is being deployed is design, bid, build, and the procurement process requires an open invitation to bid, and it's a process that it takes like about between 6 to 8 months usually. So during that time, for Penn Place or Amazon, since they're private developer, they can just easy wrap up their design and then select a contractor and then do the work. So at that time, while we were in procurement process, they were able to complete the underground utilities on site. It's complicated having two contractors at the same time, so we needed to have differentiate and separate these two projects. No matter what, that was the decision at the time. I'm sorry, I know it's additional disruption in the area, and we apologize, and we will try our best to mitigate as much as possible.
And could you also talk through similarly why this portion requires closing down while the 2A portion, I don't think ever fully closed the roads? And is the kind of significant portion of it, is it like the building of the bus stops mid-lane that requires that, and that takes a full year to do? Or are there kind of other aspects of it that make it kind of take so long and require the full closure?
Yeah, definitely this project is different to the first. This segment is different to the first one. On the first one, we were working along the curb. The stations are along the curb, and also we were able to use the temporary close the street parking and work on that area. In this case, the stations are going to be built in their median stations, as well as the bus only lanes. The bus only lanes are made of concrete. They're like 10-inch thick concrete. So yeah, trying to build in phases did not prove. It showed on the analysis that it will take longer, and especially challenges regarding durability. Like we finished the curve, and then if you open to the traffic, there will be some wear and tear of the road itself, and it still it didn't prove to be an efficient way to build this segment. Our goal is to be in and out as quick as possible, and this was determined to be the most efficient way to do it.
Thanks for the presentation, and I know, my name's Rob, I'm with the bid. I know we're really excited about the project because it'll really close the link between the bus system on Columbia Pike and the bus system in National Landing itself. So really cool, seamless, network. I did want to ask, there's obviously going to be a lot of construction workers. There's a lot of equipment. Can you talk a little bit about where the construction workers are going to park and where all the staging is going to occur? Is it occurring within the curb space that we're closing down? And if we are, why weren't there efforts, or maybe there were, maybe you can talk about that a little bit, to utilize off-site parking for construction workers so that you maybe didn't need to close the road, and staging off-site, like maybe at Penn Place, so that you didn't need to close the whole road. Maybe you could have kept one lane open.
Yes, the contractor can use the road as a staging, but still the main work is going to be on the street itself. So even if they can do the staging on another area, the main work is on the middle 2 lanes. So that's where it shows the biggest challenge. Regarding parking, in general, the contractor is aware that we will not be providing parking for their workers. However, like heavy equipment, and I think they're planning to have a trailer on site, all of that will be within the construction area.
Were there attempts to utilize the potentially private property for siting, like private developers might have done? if they were doing projects in the right of way?
We did not consider that at the time because it looks like the work zone area will provide enough area for them to provide for staging. So it has not been considered at this time.
Just one last piece. Having been in National Landing for quite a while, when we did the first phase, there was a substantial period of time when the road was closed and no work happened. But I just encourage, I don't know if the contracts are all inked and dried, but make sure that there's flexibility for the county to open the MOT during periods of unexpected delay so that we don't have to suffer the consequences of those extended delays.
Yes, definitely. This MOT is an MOT that will be constantly monitored by our traffic and operations team. When if a situation like that comes, we will look into that possibility. Also, we are the 12 months duration is to have the contractor do the work and have, as soon as they get their substantial completion, we will look into the possibility of opening back the road. So we're very positive that we can complete the work within the 12 months.
Actually made me think, just as a suggestion to consider, something that I think Clark Construction did well when they were doing this. The previous project is provide regular updates. I think you'd be surprised at the local residents' desire for, like, week by week, month by month, whatever updates. Like we've made these, molds, we've poured the foundations, we've added these like people, I think, feel better if they know exactly what's going on. I think the Maryland, I mean, this is a much smaller project, but like I've been following Maryland's Purple Line page, and they provide really good updates on like just really granular things. And I think public kind of acceptance of these sort of projects is really helpful. What I've seen in Columbia Pike, the opposite is happening, for what it's worth. Is more appreciative when there's kind of regular updates just on what's happening now, what stage it's at, how much further there is to go. I consider working with the contractor on like an email or through a Facebook page or something like that, a way of providing public communication.
Thank you. That's a good recommendation. I can work with the communications team to find a way to provide these weekly updates.
Thanks, Dan. I had two questions. First one is kind of a design question, but maybe you could help me. Why do we have two separate stops in the center median? I mean, when you go down to Richmond and you see what they have on Broad Street, they have a single bus stop in the center. Buses pull up on either side of it. It's very space efficient. It looks like, if you go back to your presentation, we have two separate stops, one for each direction. How does that work? Can you walk me through why?
Yeah, it's because of the WMATA buses. They only have doors on the right side. So we do need the two direction, and a station on each direction.
But they pull up on either side. It wouldn't matter, would it?
Do you mean those stations that like eastbound, westbound, that you use the same station, correct? Is that what you're referring to?
It's in the center. Buses pull
Mhm.
up on either side. The bus that has a door on this side going this way, it turns around, the door's now on that side. So it can go to the same bus stop.
But the doors are on the left side of that bus, probably, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have the buses on the right
Oh,
side.
they're sidewalk, okay.
Yeah. You have to basically
Right,
pull
we
a
need a special
UK. You'd have to go the opposite way.
They're the same thing in Tucson, what you're talking about.
Yeah, so they must have a different bus design. Okay,
There's no
Thanks.
back to the
Yeah.
bus stop.
yeah. Okay, the second question is have you specifically looked at the Costco traffic? Because one of your detours is Fern Street. Fern Street's basically in gridlock on a Saturday or Sunday morning.
Other days too.
And
All
it's
days.
not,
All days.
there's really no
Snowstorm.
throughput down Fern Street. as is. So when we close 12th Street, that's gonna really drive traffic into 13th Street. A lot of places aren't really set up for that kind of traffic. Have you looked at that?
We did. We run an extensive traffic and operations analysis with existing conditions and the impact of the closure. And that's why I mentioned that our traffic and operations team are going to be looking into the timing and phases of the traffic signal on Fern and 12 to optimize it as much as possible.
Okay.
Just play devil's advocate for a second. Just be careful not to sacrifice pedestrian crossing times.
Oh, yeah.
For that, yeah.
Which are already terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially at Eats.
Yeah.
Yeah, during the design of this segment took longer than the first segment because we went to the traffic and operations analysis. We analyzed the segment, actually the entire area in Bissum and Synchro. So there was modeling or how the existing conditions are plus the projections once the transway is incorporated onto 12th Street. And then later we analyze it with the proposed MOT. So we are aware of the challenges of the area regarding traffic, but once the transway is online, hopefully this traffic will be less than it is right now.
Okay. Any other questions? I did figure out how to make it work with this, with the single stop. The buses have to go to the other side. Could save you a lot of money. But okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a narrow cross section, and we're trying to balance all multimodal transportation modes on this section. So yeah, we'll look into multiple alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's move to our next topic, which is the county budget for this year. Matt, how do you want to do this? You want to pull up the presentation? We'll walk through it and point out the features. I don't know if you folks had reason to review the budget yet for local impacts. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll walk through it, and Matt's taking a look. I took a look at the things that impact this area, and we'll bring that up now. And what I'd like to do is just get folks' thoughts on any things that we need to bring to the board's attention. So there's an opportunity on the 20th for the commissions to talk to the county board about any concerns, and then Rob, you've got some on the 25th. I think the bids are invited to talk to the board about.
While you're pulling it up, Matt, this is the annual budget, right, which is going to be separate from the CIP. This is not a CIP year, is that right?
Right.
This is the.
So what they've done is they've put together a budget. There's been a little bit of an allocation to kind of accommodate the unknown in the tax rate. So we'll and that they'll set in, I think, in a couple of weeks. Okay, we'll just go to the next slide and we'll walk through slide by slide. All right, so there's a basic allocation. Just a difference of a few percentage. Let's go to slide 3. Okay. This is just talking about the continuing trend of the impact of inflation on expenses. against our slower revenue growth. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, so one of the big things that they're doing a couple of things to increase the revenue side, and one of them is going to be an increase in the meals tax by going from 4% to 5%. So that's something that will impact the restaurants in this area. It looks like it. Rob, do you have any comments on that? Does that feel like not a big deal, or?
I don't know if I would use those words. If I'm not mistaken, our Alexandria has a similar tax rate, as does
They're already,
DC.
yeah.
Yeah,
Much higher.
yeah.
I mean, so there's something to say about that, but I don't think the bid's taking a position on.
Okay,
this
that's,
particular topic.
yeah, I think they're at 6 or 7%.
According to slide, we will be the same as if they're at 5%.
Oh, they're fine.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. I didn't see anything here, and when I say I didn't see anything, I'm specifically looking for things that were unique to our area. Obviously, there's a lot to be concerned about. There is something with the WMATA, which will be impact for us. After fiscal year 26, a lot of the pandemic relief, that funding goes away, and they don't really have a full solution for carrying their capital improvement programs forward. So they've got to have to figure something out there. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, the tax rate for this proposal kept the rate constant at 1.033, but the request to advertise went in at 1.043, so a penny increase, and that just gives them the ability to set it somewhere up to that, not necessarily 1.043, but they're giving themselves room. All right. Next slide. Okay. So this starts to get at the county staffing levels. And so what they're doing is reducing the size of the county workforce two ways. One is not hiring, and then actually laying off some folks. Okay, so let's go to the next, let's go to slide 8. So they are laying off or getting rid of some down in travel and tourism area. There's a position that's being eliminated, and some funding totaling about $340,000. So that would, in principle, that's going to, that's something that impacts our tourism, our hotel vacancies, and so forth. Matt, do you know, is this one position of 5 or 10, or is this the whole thing? It was one person holding this all down.
Sorry.
In terms of the,
Slide 8.
yeah, the AED travel and tourism specialist.
It sounds like one person.
Yeah.
They have a whole team there.
Oh, they
So
did.
it's one FTE on this one.
Oh, yeah, no, but is the whole, was it a team of one that now no longer?
No, they have a handful.
Okay. Okay, let's go to slide 10. And here we start to get into a little more concerning. CPHD is going to drop a principal planner and an inspector. And Matt, you were telling me there's actually a little bit more than that going on. Can you give a summary of what the total impacts are for CPHD?
So it's really the right side of the screen where there are, I believe, 7 positions for which that are filled, are being proposed for reductions. Each department kind of summarized similar elements. I think earlier in this presentation, there was a total of 44 FTEs. So CPHD represents 7.
That's a pretty significant cut. So I think that's a concern for us because a lot of our site plans are reviewed by CPHD. The support for the SPRCs, long-range planning, really relies on CPHD to get out ahead of this, to talk to the development community, to talk to the community, to keep these site plans aligned with, in our case, the sector plan vision and requirements. So that one concerns me more than some of the other ones. And I wonder, does anybody feel similarly? Do we do have the ability to go back to the county and say, hey, I think you're cutting too hard here. Is there, what are folks' thoughts on this?
Well, I kind of ask, is there additional rationale that supports this drastic of a cut? Is there less workload because construction slowed down? Is there why this? I think it.
Or how are they supplementing? I mean, is there some technology that they're going to be utilizing to?
I think part of the responses to those questions, we can send a link. Kind of took place during last week's work session.
Yeah.
The department, they had a marathon this month.
Yeah.
But there was one specific to CPHD, and I think the director, Samir Bird, I think indicated, if this package of cuts were to go forward, here's what it would mean: likely, delays in review time, delays in inspection time, some things on our work plan may not proceed. So there's like a combination of things, but there was also another conversation about how they came about and why those, not others. So it's difficult choices really for every department.
So the impact would be possibly delaying some applications.
Yeah, I think that in that work session conversation, what I picked up on was because this is being proposed at the same time as fees are going up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If the two were evaluated in vacuum, you're paying more, but things are taking longer to. But it's because these two forces are colliding in the same budget.
Yeah, what did?
Yeah. It's very uncomfortable. I mean, there were comments that projects are different now than they were 10 years ago, that they're more complex, that there's more to review, so that you can't just say, well, so the argument is it will delay things and developers are going to feel crankier about the fee increases. And that was my takeaway, that it's not going to be pleasing, but
Delay the process, but also actually building and for the county to get money back.
right.
Not a good
Things are it's gonna slow down what we keep hoping to see.
I mean, I think fees were overdue for increases throughout the county, just about everything we do. I think the other piece that happened during that work session is the current planning manager, Aaron Schreiber, did confirm what I think some even on the board mentioned, which was the fees alone are not going to stall projects. They actually represent probably the smallest things that developers have to pay in the entire thing. So the process alone is driven by much bigger market issues. But again, it's the sensitive environment that we're operating in. So it's never a good time to increase.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fee discussion had been going on. It started in 2022. And there had been a push by CPHD, ISD in order to 70% of what their cost was. So they implemented a fee increase last year. And then they instituted they're proposing a much larger fee increase this year.
So what are the fees designed to recover? The cost of staff review of submitted plans? Is it also inspections during construction and code enforcement and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so the fee schedule, which lists all those different payments that are due when a project comes in, they're split up into zoning fees, which kind of capture planning and zoning. There are DES fees. You get into the second stage, which is the inspection and those plan reviewers. So there's a lot of different fees along the way to get something even constructed. But to date, as Robert mentioned, we've been recuperating only a fraction of what it really costs projects.
So the next question is the CPHD manpower scaled for what our past development pipeline looks like as far as new projects coming forward? And are we in kind of a new world here, and have things slowed down? And if they have, maybe we can continue to move a smaller number of projects through with a slightly lower manpower. And so is that part of the picture that the board's looking at? And is that something, in other words, if the developers think that we've got a lot of projects that aren't coming through, maybe they need to push the board and say, we need to get some more planners on staff. I don't know how that works.
I think it comes in waves. Right now, there's certainly a slowdown in construction.
Yeah.
I've not seen a slowdown in the entitlement of projects. Last 6-9 months, it's like the rest of the county has been picking up. Or
Yeah.
This region has stopped.
Because I keep getting.
Yeah.
Right. So there's you can see SBRC.
So that's, yeah,
happening.
saw that, yeah, there's a new,
But you're right. I think it's this dynamic evaluation of when does the county need planners to review plans? When does the county need inspectors to inspect construction activity?
well, the other part of this, and I think it's worth bringing up, is we've seen quite a few projects go through the SPRC and get entitled, but they're not moving.
Mhm.
So if they had to wait in the queue longer, it's not impacting their ability to turn shovels, apparently. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, from the private development perspective, I think one of the great things about developing in Arlington is that there was relative certainty around the process, around the timing. It might be involved or take a long time, but you at least could reasonably approximate what that duration would be.
When you were going to come out.
So as opposed to kind of some of the surrounding jurisdictions where knowing what that timeline was much more difficult.
Yeah.
And I think it provided Arlington a significant advantage from the developer perspective. As you start to introduce variance in the review or approval times, then it could make Arlington a more difficult place to develop. So now whether or not that actually comes true based on the dynamics of how many applications and how many planners and right, that I think is still to be seen.
Like we have a question online.
Okay.
Yep, I had a question particularly about the transit cuts, because I looked at the county description for the reduction in service for the 43. And if you look at the justification, the county cites a lot of numbers from 2024. And as someone who regularly takes the 43, it's changed dramatically in the last couple of months, particularly with RTO, where during peak rush hour, the 43 is almost completely full, because a lot of federal workers, it's a very popular route to take. And I think that data where they reduced service at peak hours, from 10 minutes to 20 minutes, is going to have a significant impact on a lot of people's commutes. and I think they probably have to revisit that study given, dramatic changes in, how people are commuting within the last couple of weeks and months. The 43 is a very important connection from, courthouse, to our area, and kind of linking to, the biggest areas in Arlington together. That transfer is not very clean. You can sometimes have very significant waits going from, the orange line or the silver line to the blue line, especially during rush hour, where you're already having very crowded trains. I think, trying to revisit the AR2 Route 43 and maybe taking cuts outside of peak, the peak transit, for commuters, who are traveling, 8 a.m., during those peak hours the federal workers are leaving. I think being more adjustive to the new environment, would be very important. It's a very important route for our area.
Yeah, I was gonna raise our 43, I take it all the time, and it is the fastest way to get between here and courthouse. You can't bike that fast, you can't drive that fast, you can't walk that fast, you can't metro that fast. It's one direct route. I love it. And I don't want it cut. And Matthew, so there's timing cuts during rush hours? Are there other timing cuts? I mean, are they supposed to get down earlier? Are they stopping Saturday service?
The main cut, because I was reading it right here, and I can share it, in the chat if people want. But it's basically taking what was a 10 minutes during rush hour and changing it to 20. And it's so popular on among federal workers, between those those peak hours as a commuting route. I really think that they're going to be causing a lot of crowding, as well as just making it a very uncomfortable, commute for people who wind up taking it, as well as, delays. So, I think definitely revisiting this, I posted in the chat, because I really think the data that they cite in this is not very accurate today.
That was very helpful, Alex. So your observation is with the return to work, that bus is getting much busier than it had been several months ago.
I've noticed that too.
Okay. I mean, is there a chance that the county didn't have that data when they made this decision?
That's what I think, because it really is, you think like the DEA building, where, in Pentagon City, it's like on 12th Street. I think it's like Hayes and 12th. There's a lot of federal office buildings in the area where, I know there's like a lot of federal marshals, Navarre, and federal workers who are commuting that were really affected by this RTO. And, people, I think it was 1 day a week from OPM, and now it's 5 days a week. At the Pentagon, HUD, all these different services, many federal workers in this area, we're kind of ground zero for these changes. I think a lot of these transit routes, if they're relying on data from 23, 24, it's not going to be accurate today. And I think, particularly the 43, I just anecdotally, I think if closing that peak rush hour will have a big effect on people.
My sense is that they're not looking at the ridership data. They're looking at the fact that it's a redundant, that they see it as a redundant service. I don't see it as redundant.
No, it's not. No.
They see it as a redundant service. You can already get to courthouse via other ways, so this is an easy thing to cut. I think that's the mentality.
It's a huge difference in time.
Yeah,
I know.
Huge difference.
I used to use it all the time. I'm not advocating, I'm just explaining.
Yeah, right.
Don't shoot me. But I think that's why there's a disconnect between the data
Yeah.
and the actual proposal.
And pushing more people on the metro is something that they probably think is a good thing.
Yeah.
More fare recovery.
But I mean, in many ways, the optics of investing all this money in a bus line and then cutting bus service, I know it's not the same thing, but it's just the optics of that.
It's a pretty big number.
It's a really big number.
$500,000.
It's half the service.
Yeah.
Yep, put it in the letter, please.
All right, well, thanks for the discussion on that. All right, let's keep going and see what else we have. Let's see, the next thing I saw. I didn't, on slide 14, there's a, we get into the, actually, now we move into the investments. Any comments on the AHIF maintaining their base budget? It's on the left column bottom. Robert, is there any concerns about that? Is that keeping that investment going as planned, or? Okay.
I think that's up to the board. Developers will still contribute to AHIF.
Okay.
But that's going to be dependent on requests from developers or from property owners on accessing those funds, how the board evaluates.
AHIF, right, this is the board contribution to the AHIF, which is separate, right, from any developer contributions that may come with.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if there are any existing projects that we're going to rely on AHIF funds being available. That I imagine that there are right now.
There was actually a post on the website, the CPHD presentation. Either that one or the one before that same afternoon, that I believe was partnering with a different department. They actually had a very helpful pie chart that said, this is all the AHIF that we have. Here's how much we get, from the county. Here's how much we get from developer contributions. But there's also like another few categories where at the end cycle or throughout the cycle, these projects are actually operating. We are contributing back, repaying those loans. That's actually a pretty significant number. So you can kind of see the full picture of like what goes into it. So I can definitely put that up.
Okay, let's go to slide 15, and there's something here I didn't understand. Under other, last bullet, shifting Long Bridge to partial NTS. This is an investment too. Does anybody know what NTS is?
What kind of Long Bridge are they talking about?
Is that about the center or the road or?
Yeah,
the
I don't.
bridge or-
Yeah.
The bridge itself, I don't know.
Doesn't say.
Oh, master transportation study? Is it the bike connection down to Long Bridge that they're talking about? For the bike trail to the new railroad bridge?
Right, it's not gonna be funded.
I can check because the ES in their own presentation and their work session, they might have more than one slide on that. Right, they have capacity to elaborate than just one bullet. So
I think I remember it on the aquatic center. I think Boeing is not going to be able to make this same kind of contributions.
Right.
I think I heard that some of that money is going away.
It'd be like, just Google it.
Acronym bingo.
NTS.
Usually I wonder if it's like a typo.
Yes.
Usually if you Google like NTSR.
Oh.
Something.
I'm trying to do.
CPA.
Yeah.
Right. Right,
I
behind the
get-
funding, Virginia, right.
So it could be a typo.
That's what I was thinking.
And then I think the amount of that is the shared district.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
okay, so it's a typo.
What is it?
MBTA, it's MBTA who is not funding it.
Northern Virginia Transportation.
Ah.
If they're not funding that piece of that connection.
Okay, yeah, we applied for it and they said no.
Right, correct.
It doesn't help the community.
Uh,
Their groups.
Right. That was the reasoning.
And what's the proper acronym?
MBTA. It was actually
North
two groups,
Virginia.
MBTA.
Okay,
somebody else.
Right, there were two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're missing something. I don't think that's it. Something else.
Net tax support? I don't know what that means,
I don't think that's it.
but it's showing up in the budget. This is the FY 25 budget. There is a reference to some kind of way of measuring. I think it's an accounting mechanism.
Does it mean Long Bridge Aquatic Center?
Yeah, and my guess is they're changing how they do accounting for Longbridge.
Because they don't own Long Bridge. CDOT, is it?
Yeah,
it's
the aquatic, for the aquatic center.
So it must be the aquatic center.
Definitely not clear from the slide.
If somebody knows.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Cutting tree watering. That doesn't seem like a good idea. We will have to plant more trees.
Yes.
I'm not following this. Is this a,
Oh, this is investments. So I think this is not contracting, but contracted for,
I see. I see.
Okay, right.
yeah.
Putting
Yeah.
money in.
I got you.
Okay.
Got you.
But somewhere in here, they were gonna do less mowing.
Right. I think that was in the,
Might be okay.
Which might be okay.
yeah.
Other than visibility in the places, but.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. And then again, this is investment, so that they still have the Long Bridge synthetic field replacement on the list. I think that's a CIP item. I didn't see any other items specifically called out here.
Where is the design for Concord Square?
I don't think this is a comprehensive assessment of everything.
Okay, not to worry
Just
about.
trying to put some highlights, because what we're looking at is really the first presentation that was supposed to represent all departments, and kind of like an executive summary. So there's a
Okay.
lot of reduction in content. So maybe what I'll do is not just the CPHC, but the other 3 or 4 presentations. If you really want to just dive in, we can post this on the website.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. And there is a where to invest the next ongoing dollar, like, if we get to that happy place. See under parks, libraries and youth, there's a senior center expansion. Does anybody know what that is?
Uh-uh.
Is it
Maybe we're taking over the room right there.
right? I wonder if they're talking about hours expansion.
Oh, well, there is there's been a sort of a voluntary push. Can we have full hours here instead of just 3 days? a week?
Yeah, right.
That matching the other senior centers.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that
Right.
makes sense. Okay. I mean, I think that's fine because what we've seen in the past is nobody can really do anything with the other 2 days because.
Right.
Right.
There's no, all of these things are full with seniors, so. And when it came, the only thing we were looking for was, summer camps. They needed five days.
Right.
I didn't understand what you just said. Why couldn't you do more here?
Oh, so for summer camps,
No, for the seniors. That was the first part of your statement?
oh, there was, because the seniors are right here 3 days a week, there's not much. Every time we looked around to see what can you do with those extra 2 days, there wasn't a whole lot of takers.
Oh, I see, not seniors, okay.
There's just not enough scope for it.
And there
Let's
was
know when you get 5.
to
Right.
have more seniors. So this is saying perhaps, okay, well,
So is the additional cost to staff member to kind of open it and close it for the,
Other 2 days.
yeah,
That's what it amounts to, yes.
They have a director, I think, who's here and runs things. But otherwise,
May I ask a question? I mean, should I infer that there's a space here that is open and there's nobody using it? And because there's nobody that needs to use it? I find that, I mean, like, third space is such a big deal that we need that.
On the,
Like after school stuff. I mean, I'm sure if there was somebody, if someone knew that there was this space that could have a potential for 2 days a week, we could fill it.
well, you could try. In the past, we've done both things. One is there's no storage here.
But does it have to be program space?
uh, As opposed to, you mean private groups?
As opposed to,
Like a dance class?
as like a community center, like, you know,
Part of it is
third
supporting
space.
the staff.
I'm sorry.
There has to be staff here.
Well, that's, it's a, right, that's the size of the equation, but I'm looking at the, you know, I'm looking at the one side, I was like, well, we don't have any use for it, but I know people, like, you know, let's just say Miriam Gennari, she would be in here in a heartbeat looking for some, you know, there are people looking for space, you know,
Yeah, well, they could reach out to
but
Parks and Rec.
sort of a catch-22 if the space isn't, like Pam said, you know, open, then nobody's, you know, so I guess my observation is that I wouldn't make the assumption that you don't need the space.
Well, that
Okay,
was,
use
that,
it.
when I looked at it about 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
That was the issue. There's
Yeah.
no, what this place needs more than anything is the ability to host summer camps.
Okay,
And, because there are so many kids around.
right,
There's no, I mean, as someone who's going through the summer camp process for the first time.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
brutal.
There are no summer camps in this area. I'm gonna have to drive pretty far this summer. Like, it's amazing that.
Right.
And the problem is that they have to have indoor space days.
Yep.
And although we have a huge amount of field space, we
We
don't
don't have a
enough-
lot of
we
interior
don't have
space,
interior
right?
space, So they can't run camps here. They used to run camps.
Yes.
Small camps.
Yes.
But when the seniors moved in and took that first day, then that went off the table. So that's the context that I was talking
Okay,
about.
thank you, appreciate it. Maybe we could chat about it later.
That speaks to the need for just a community, a bigger, better community center.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we've got a whole fire station behind that wall. That is used for high-end storage.
Yeah, really high-end storage.
Okay, let's keep going. The only other thing I think on slide 21, so just a summary of the assessments. So real estate tax is advertised at 1.043, the meals tax, and then they went in, they did, I think, Robert, is the bid tax rate flat for you guys? Okay.
Yeah, the board can't unilaterally change our assessment rate without proposal from our voting members.
Okay.
The process there is we propose a budget based on our current tax rate.
Yeah,
And
okay,
then they look at it and approve it,
that makes sense.
review it.
Because
approve it.
they did approve motions for Roslyn and Alston. So that must have been,
To improve, to increase.
yeah,
Yeah, that would have come from that.
that would have been initiated by this.
Both of those districts experienced much more severe reductions in their budgets than we did. We had a very small reduction. 0.5% or something like that. Boston saw over 10% reduction.
Okay, and then, I guess the only other thing I thought of note would be slide 27. This shows the, oh, did you want, yeah. The work session. So there's a budget hearing for the commissions, and we can also submit written testimony on later this week, and then the bids on the 25th. And I think there's a transportation on the 27th. So the one I took the most notes on was Part 43. That feels like that merits sending an email in. do we, okay.
I was just gonna say, I've said this in other venues, so forgive me if others have already heard me talk about it. Somewhat, it's related, so bear with me. VDOT funded a pilot study to look at performance parking in Arlington, where they do the changing of the rates based on how heavily things are used. But one of the other pieces of information that they studied was how many people are evading meters. So I use that term on purpose because we use it for Metro, but we don't use it for people who don't pay for parking, who think they should have it for free. It's stealing, right? It's stealing. So it's meter evasion. So the actual evasion rate is something crazy like 50 to 60%. So back envelope calculation per year. I'm not talking about giving people tickets. I'm just talking about making sure that people increase that enforcement rate. It's over $10 million a year that we're leaving on the table because people think they're entitled to it.
But the how do you do the enforcement without tickets?
Well, you do, I mean, you have to ticket, but I'm saying the $10 million, it doesn't come from ticketing revenue.
Yeah, no,
The
right.
$10 million
right, I
comes from
understand. It comes
just
down to
increasing
the-
the-
Yeah,
It's your-
increasing.
You're using it and you're not paying, you're a scofflaw.
Right.
Right, I understand.
So I think there's a bit of a shaming tactic.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a space that, I think of any jurisdiction, I think it's probably easiest to evade parking meters here. than Anywhere I've
I
ever
hear
seen.
people all the time say, oh, they're not gonna get you. And I'm like, I remember 20 years ago, and all it takes is a couple of tickets and you're like, I'm not gonna do that again.
Yeah, so I think the point here though is, $10+ million, we're talking about $500,000 for R43, right? So what does it mean for the budget is probably some FTEs for meter management.
Right.
Not a popular thing to propose, but if you change the script, right? Everybody seemed to be cool about spending tens of millions of dollars on new fare gates.
Can I ask you something really sort of technical? Is there no way, if people are using the app to park, is there no way to get into that to know when, to have data to know when things are happening or expired, or, I mean, there's no way to monitor it to
I
know?
don't think the sensors are connected to the private company
Right.
that operates
Right, I understand about that.
But
part.
the county
It's just
knows where there's the highest levels
Of scofflaws. Yeah.
based on the sensors that they.
And that's in our area too.
I don't know where the high levels are, actually. I'm not sure.
I think Alex has seen that.
Yeah, Alex, go ahead.
So the question I had was kind of going to that March 25th discussion about libraries. It didn't seem like there was any devoted funding in the next budget for particularly the Crystal City Library. Also updates to the library in Pentagon City. I guess sometime in the future, trying to it seems like one step towards that commitment towards creating that Crystal City Library, is maybe creating that funding line where, it can particularly get done. I think, more planning as well as, having dedicated funding source, it seems like, if it's not even being included in the budget, if there's more kicking of the can down the road, and it doesn't seem to, be a commitment while, the area continues to, increase in population, above, significant, very few changes have been made, for the libraries, in this area, and it's completely changed since, the Pentagon City Library was built. And we would like, I definitely know, from the Aurora Highlands Civic Association, there was definitely, an intent to have a much more of a commitment there towards building that Crystal City Library.
I'm thinking that's really more a capital improvement program item more than a budget item, Alex. so I think for that one, I go back to Stacy's request earlier to just kind of generally ping
Status.
the county manager's office on where all this stuff sits. So let's do that.
I have a different library question. Slide 9, the last item, it says public services, freeze branch manager for 6 months. 1.0 FTE banking. Is that here? We know which library that is?
I don't.
Is there a way to know?
I'm not sure.
That be in the budget? If it's here, we want to screen. Because that position's been vacant for a while.
Oh, this
Yeah.
has been, okay, so we have reason to think.
Yeah.
I see.
And I love the library almost as much as I love the art book because
Like, just one open question, for the Arlington County Police Department, my understanding is that the, department is short a couple dozen officers. Or potentially even more. I don't know if that's due to, I don't know if there's anything in the budget, I don't know if that's budgetary, based, or if it's more so demand based of the position. But I don't know if there was anything in the budget that, signifies one way or the other, or just the general thoughts if the department is, the current staffing levels is sufficient, or if people would generally like to see those positions filled.
Okay.
Robust staffing.
They want more officers, but they don't want to hire more officers. In Arlington County, if you want to become a police officer, you have to take a pre-screening test. If you fail any test, any question on the pre-screening test, you're automatically eliminated. You aren't interviewed and they don't talk to you. And then you go down the street to Alexandria and you take 8% more in pay and they hire you, within a week because they want to fill the position. And Arlington has this wonderful idea that we really want more people. We just can't find the right people to work here. And they've been doing it now for 3 years and they're getting less and less police officers.
Yeah.
And, a good friend of mine graduated, got a full ride to George Mason, became an Army officer, is a second lieutenant in the Army and in reserves, and wants to become an Arlington County police officer. And he missed one question on the test. But he's doing a great job at Alexandria now as a police officer because they took him the following week.
Oh.
And there's story after story after story. It's such a tragedy, and at some point in time, they're going to have to do something, but they haven't figured it out.
Sheriff came to our civic association meeting and was complaining the same thing.
Yeah, it's.
Saw something in here about controlling the overtime cost. That's probably a function of not having enough officers.
Are you seeing anything at the mall that gives you concern about support?
No, I just generally have heard that the police department has been short. I know there's, a dedicated detail up in Clarendon on the weekends for the bar district up there.
Right.
And I'm just curious, as you discussed the budget, if it's more budget based and based for that position, but now that, what you shared is informative. But yeah, from the mall perspective, we're all, we're of course pro, as much police presence as possible.
Right.
Last time I heard Chief Penn talk about this was that basically all the jurisdictions in the Washington metro area are short police public safety. And all our jurisdictions have responded by kind of increasing salaries to try to retain their current force. But the other part of it is most of our public safety workforce doesn't reside in the county. They reside some distance away. And if Prince William offers an equivalent or a bump in salary, and it's no longer a 2-hour drive to get to work that can start to be attractive. So it's hard to retain the workforce here. And then he also spoke to, they've got people going through the Northern Virginia Training Academy, younger officers. But I think that part of our issue in maintaining a public safety workforce is the high cost of housing and maybe affordable family-sized housing could be part of that. But I think this is just, this is not an Arlington only issue. This is affecting all of the jurisdictions.
I would agree with that, because all of the police departments and all of the
Yeah.
jurisdictions our malls operate in, which is more than
Yeah.
40 states.
And we now have
So
collective
ubiquitous
bargaining with our public safety organizations, and they are pushing hard for increases, and they're getting them. I don't think this is an easy. Oh, one other thing Chief Penn did mention when I caught him in the hall, he says Arlington does have pretty high standards for its police force. I think its educational standards are, I don't know if they're higher than neighboring jurisdictions, but he spoke about being unwilling to really compromise those. He wanted to maintain those standards. So that's the discussions that I've had with Chief Penn. That's kind of the feedback I've gotten.
Very similar. Going years.
But the empty police cars are doing a great job, right? You notice around the malls, we have, the higher police presence,
Police vehicle presence.
which is, they took the empty cars that they don't have officers to put into and have them parked around the mall. I think the thieves are not smart enough to figure it out. There's no one in them.
There's, is there like a letter going? Are you preparing a letter in response to this? What are we
I'm
doing?
keeping some notes. The one I'm really seeing is the comment on the R43 reduction, and wondering if we want to grab Rob's comment about the fare evasion as a way to, if they say, well, show me where the money's going to come from. Should we put that in there?
Businesses would be, I would think the businesses wouldn't like that too much. They like that, okay?
Businesses liking and people pay for their parking.
Yeah,
I mean.
that's
it's
okay.
me-
I'm just surprised a bid representative would be advocating for that if I was a business owner.
Advocating for enforcement.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, I'm cool with that. So I guess my question is, one of the things that I hear, guys on 23rd Street, are they part of the bid? The 23rd Street restaurants?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're like, very worried about the police, presence, right? I mean, Taha has been broken into several times. I know Artie complains, and so I just wonder if we're sending a letter, and all the crime that we've had through here. I mean, that would be something that seems to me we would all agree that there should only be a desire for more enforcement all across our area. And if they were sending something back to the county as a response, I mean, that seems like one of those issues. What do you think?
Well, where do you see the police vacancy in the report? Do we know where that is?
I didn't see any vacancy numbers in the report. This is conversations I've had
Okay.
with people throughout the county.
I'd really like to limit our input to something in the budget. That's,
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I thought that's what we're,
yeah,
talking about.
I don't see anything.
police department there.
There's, operation division, management, administration.
The only thing I saw in here was something regarding right sizing
The overtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on slide 15.
To the extent somebody is, in DC, right? Or maybe not DC, in some jurisdictions, I can't think of where it is, right? The police, when they're on the beat, they're writing parking tickets. Not always a meter maid, right? Am I wrong about that?
Arlington police don't typically write meter tickets. They
And they do no other,
moving violations.
they're out and around, you know.
I
looking.
think in the tier of the
Right.
calls that they respond to, that's traffic enforcement is
Really
not the top
Yeah,
response.
maybe I'm thinking about 40 years ago when we
Yeah.
used to do that.
Yeah, and this is, so I think I'd recommend we not address the places that don't see a cut there that's impactful. It's not to say we don't have ongoing concerns, but I'd like to go after the cuts. So really, the one I just keep hearing is the R43. So I'm happy to write an email. Alex, you spoke about it. If I draft an email, or you can, is there just a handful of people who just want to review an email and we'll send it off? Pam, okay, Pam, Alex, can we enlist your help?
Sure.
Okay, good. Okay, great. Let's close out this topic. And then the last thing to talk about is I thought we'd just take a couple minutes to collect our thoughts or see what we think on the on some of the federal government downsizing, see what folks have heard. Let's see, I've got a slide there. Can I just share it? Excellent. Let's try this. Oh, it is excellent. Okay. So I was looking to just see what traction we could get on what we know about the reductions. And there's a lot of noise out there. I didn't see anything that had been put together by the county yet, or interestingly, even George Mason, which has this entire center based on for the regional economy, is utterly silent. So, but Fairfax County has actually stepped into it. They've got a really nice slide, and they start out saying there's a lot of noise. We don't know, but we're going to take our best crack at it. And I thought that was pretty nice. So I followed that. And so basically, what they know so far has been about 85,000, a reduction of about 85,000 workers on paper. It's about 5% of the total. There's nobody who's tracking the local impacts yet. They just haven't got a handle on it. We've got about 24,000 federal workers, and I think they mean workers, not necessarily folks who live here,
Right.
in Arlington, which is about 11% of our workforce. They did reach out to George Mason, and the guy who runs the place said that it's about, there's like a 2 to 3x multiplier on the federal job. So for every federal job that's lost, there's a couple of contracting jobs out there that'll probably go away as well. Arlington has put together a little support page, but that's what we know about the workforce at this point. I'll run through these and take people's comments and other things we've heard. Federal contracting, 4,000 contracts canceled. Again, they're not super sure what the impacts are, but they note that 5 of the 10 biggest contractors are actually headquartered in Northern Virginia. And this is from the Fairfax County site. 82 contractors in this area have cancellations. You can find that if you go to the Doge site.
Your source is the Doge website.
Yeah, and it's not downloadable either.
Just want transparent.
Yes, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
The page,
Then there's all right, and 106 cancellations as of February. Okay, real estate. Doge has a list of those as well, and there's 3 in Arlington. One of them cross-references the Mining Safety Health Administration, Crystal Gateway 5. And then there's two other leases, location not specified. For GSA lease and the Division of Homeland, the Department of Homeland Security office. And another, all total is about 200,000 square feet. The other thing I noted was what's going on in housing right now. That in the data, they said the data is probably lagging, but housing sales are pretty strong. And they think that so far the return to work mandate is still kind of overwhelming the
Awesome.
get out of the government.
Right.
So, but that's probably gonna, I think,
Change.
yeah, that'll change. So that's what I was able to find. I wondered if anybody had any comments on that, any more facts on cancellations and impacts or things we ought to be looking for as the months unwind.
We should be checking the Fairfax. See what they keep projecting.
Yeah, it looks like what they're doing is building a slide deck that they'll just keep updating and getting better and better at.
Emily?
Oh, hi, Emily.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight. I am doing my single parenting thing. I don't know if you all know this, but I am a federal employee. And since this meeting is recorded, I'm just going to try to make some high-level comments. But I believe there are 2.3 million federal workers across the country / maybe world. We are getting our news the same way everyone is, on the news and Twitter. I have been finding most of my information on Reddit. No one internally is communicating anything. And related to the contracts and the leases, those decisions are being made outside of our own agencies. So we are being told to either send information if they even request it, or we're finding out that they're canceling our leases without even consulting the actual agency. So it's extremely challenging, and I wouldn't trust that website, Mike. But there's probably no good way to track anything right now. Everything we're learning is word of mouth, and it's extremely anxiety provoking. So I think that's all I have to say, unless you all have questions, and I'd be much happier to talk offline, but I'm not sure I can really add much compared to, even our senior leadership. They're finding out stuff on the news. So it's just a very challenging time.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Yeah, appreciate how hard it must be. Anybody else have any comments? Hey.
I think it's interesting. I don't know if anybody else tracks the ridership data that they publish. But if you look at Pentagon, it's the past couple of weeks, it's up a considerable amount. It's still nowhere near what it was pre-pandemic levels. Track the Pentagon City and the Pentagon. And I think last time I looked, it was about 70-something hundred riders per day on average.
Mm-hmm.
From the restaurant perspective, I know nobody likes the traffic being back, except for us restaurant people, because all of a sudden, all those people are back in the city or back in the community and are going out to eat lunch, which hasn't happened for a couple of years, because everybody eats at home in front of their screen.
5 years.
So, I mean, from our perspective, we love the traffic jams and the people coming in and doing that. And, you know, and I don't know, as someone who's never been able to work from home, you know, because it's kind of hard to have them come to my house and get the food. So, you know, it's just, and we're open 365 days a year. So we don't get many holidays. So, I mean, there is the other side of us who have all been dying for the last 4 or 5 years, who are certainly happy about the fact that people are back.
Mhm. Yeah, it seems to be generally a benefit for us.
I just want to follow up on that and say that might be a short-term impact because people are so angry. And for example, my daycare costs went up $600 because of this. So I will be bringing my lunch. It's just that all of this happened so suddenly. And for people who have different life situations, they might be eating out right now, but I honestly wouldn't expect that to trend in the long run because this is costing people a lot of money in different ways that no one was really prepared for. And I love restaurants, trust me. So I'm actually heartbroken that that's $600 less of discretionary income that I have. I have like no discretionary income left because of this. So I'm just saying that might be a short-term bump, but I wouldn't anticipate that maintains long-term.
Okay, good, Joe.
Well, I'll just say that, but you can't look in the Washington Business Journal every day without hearing about more lease cancellations. But I'd also remember reading that some of the federal buildings actually for quite a long time have had pretty low occupancy, Department of Agriculture, the Forestall building. And, you know, that's, if there's going to be that much empty office space, I'm thinking, you know, we're right next door. That has to affect us as well. And what kind of environment does that mean for commercial property developers? Is it causing, is everybody going to pull back, kind of wait to see, you know, if the future starts to look clear? Because it looks like it's pretty risky here to move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Characterization.
And so how do we get through a period when there may be less actual shovels being turned? We may have entitlements, but maybe the next couple of years, we may not see as much actual kind of changes on the ground. So how should we best make use of our time and efforts during this coming period?
Repopulating cities is hard because residential is much less dense.
Yeah.
Per square foot, for 1,000 square feet, you can get a lot more in office than you do for people living there, and compared to other uses. So it's not that it shouldn't happen. It's just it's slower. And there are a lot of moving pieces to it, so it's just hard to project.
I think from the regional perspective and what's happening with downtown federal property, you know, a lot of that stuff's empty because you can't work in it anymore. Like it's old and nobody's invested in the buildings themselves to keep them going. Why they don't offload them is a totally different conversation. Although there's a group that's been working on that.
Yeah, there was already a list of buildings that they were ready to say, no, let's get rid
But
of it.
typically it is a difficult process because each agency needs to prioritize that effort when they have other work to do. And this has turned that upside down a little bit. So again, it kind of remains to be seen exactly how that plays out, how these buildings get transitioned. Do they still require to be covered by the what's the group downtown that controls all the architecture? The
Finance Commission.
National Capital Planning.
Yes. So what kind of regulatory environment are they in? So, I mean, I think redevelopment down there is possible, but it is not going to be necessarily an easy or cheap thing to do.
No.
And, to Robert's point earlier, entitling on this side of the river can be a little bit easier. And you have the benefit of really great neighborhoods already. Yeah, there's more people in an office building, but they're gone at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. Having people in a neighborhood like we have here, you have people all day long.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the things that we've seen as a really resilient asset, that we've baked this into our kind of long-term planning, a balanced land use framework. And it's also why, not every business has fared well, but some new businesses are seeing opportunity. And even since 2020, there's 50 new businesses have opened up on the streets of National Landing.
Well,
So,
JBG, they'll propose that CMRE2 effort for those properties on Crystal Drive,
Yeah.
the hotel and
They-
multifamily. So I think that's a very interesting development. And
Yeah. We want people living there
right.
because they're customers.
Matt, do you know how that's going to proceed? Is that going to go through an SPRC? That's going to go a different process. Right?
TBD.
There's a process question, I think is following very, very newly adopted guidance to make sure that the path is clear and streamlined. Those type of requests, which I think everybody hopes we get more of. I think that's more of a theory conversation. I think practice is more about, can a building designed for X can accommodate Y with limited renovations and interventions. In some ways, I think we're going to be learning a lot about how this one proceeds. And can they pull it off? What kind of comments we get from various plan reviewers to see, yes, in fact, it could work, or it could, but here's what has to happen.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's some surprises along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So watch this space. Or
Yeah, I mean, from a timing perspective, how long does a request like this take?
yeah,
And then even if the county does what it's supposed to do, is the owner who filed the application going to quickly proceed and start
Yeah.
reservations?
Right.
Which is a very different question that we can't really control.
Now we're gonna redo all this.
Have any ideas now that Amazon's back in office 5 days a week, how many employees they actually have in their Met Park?
They're required to have 10,000 by the end of the year with the incentive agreement. So they haven't said anything that I've seen. I don't think that we'll know the actual count until they file tax returns. So that should come out in late April. And then that number increases by 1,400 by the end of 25, and then it jumps up another 2,000 or something like that in 26. So there's like an escalating rate to get to 5,000.
most recent number I heard was between 8,000 and 9,000.
Yeah, so they confirmed in June last year that they were running peak occupancy, which typically was just Wednesday, of 8,000 people at that park. Their return to office went into effect on January 2nd, although there's been, I think, considerable turbulence around how that actually works out. Anecdotally, like we've seen a lot more people, a lot more consistently.
Yeah, it's when you even go to I went to Peruvian Brothers for lunch the other day and the place was packed.
Parking garage is definitely.
Yes.
I was gonna say, so I mean, in the context of the federal, like, you can compare this a little bit to BRAC in that, like a big, for this area, but the big benefit now is we are much more diversified as a neighborhood than we were 20 plus years ago, and we have the sector plans to guide us. Upside of BRAC is that at least it was planned, right? And there seems to be little to no planning going on economically or in terms of federal properties. And I see lots, and I know we're going to get kicked out. I just think it is for this body's role to figure out and think about how you monitor and evaluate advice to the county for this area, which is, you know, it's going to see some impact, but it's going to be really hard to predict as leases expire or don't expire. And also workers and how you support the residents.
Right.
In a period of both, you know, as Emily experiences finding out via social media about your employment future too many residents and probably, you know, landowners. I've been trying to think of like I suggested like pathway, but I don't know. It is very hard to suggest pathways when you're operating in chaos.
The one other in DC, the CFO came out with a report talking about how this might impact DC's budget. But as you start to reduce office space, reduce real estate value, reduce incomes, it starts to have a downward spiral effect.
Right.
Jurisdiction. Now DC, I think, is facing it much more acutely. But that's where the conversation we had about the budget and cuts, right? That could be a conversation that comes up as if this remains in effect and if this continues, as this works its way through the various iterations that it's going to hit, because it will hit everywhere.
At this time next year, when we're talking about Wilmot, I think it's going to be an interesting one.
Yes.
Oh, gotta fix it.
Right. So do you feel like the bid has the mechanisms in place to stay on top of this, or is this something to figure out what's happening?
Stay on top.
In terms of leases, leaving, and layoffs.
I mean, it's the bid's got in a collaboration with the county on this.
Right.
So a lot of it's focused, for us, it's focused on our niche, right? And a lot of that's around innovation from an office leasing standpoint, cybersecurity, defense tech, those kinds of things. We're really angling there, and there's been a lot of activity there still. We are still near the Pentagon, and there's still a pretty big advantage to that proximity. And the world is a strange place right now. So I think, it's possible that, the pull and tug of this is going to result in some new activity in National Landing, potentially.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
one more hand up.
Oh, yeah. Alex.
Sure. So I'm a federal worker as well, and I both live in Pentagon City and work in Pentagon City. I'm a federal worker who work in one of the many office buildings, and you not only have the Pentagon, but you have a lot of offices linked with the DoD, the DEA headquarters. There's a very large DOJ building, and a lot of federal contractors work on it. Not just not just the general federal employees, but the contractors as well. That there's a lot of I think one of the most important things right now is just flexibility. Workers who find themselves part of downsizing, who need to leave, especially this encouragement in the recent executive order to move offices outside of the DC area. And worry particularly, you think about, if you start having another round of BRAC and you have, buildings moving out, what additional vacancies could mean. I think just having, at a county level, encouraging, a lot of, renting companies to provide a lot of flexibility for workers who, let's say they move down here, for work and a job and find themselves, the lease that they agreed to, there's a loss of a job there and an income, and trying to provide an out ramp for people trapped into leases that they're not able to to meet their basic expenses. I think is going to be something to focus on. At that same level, I think some level of caution for restaurants that open up, because they're eager to get all of these federal workers who are now returning to the office. I think that it could be a trap, because at the same point, the federal government that brings people back to the office can also take them away. And I think you don't want a lot of businesses should have some some level of caution about opening up that level of business and activity on the weekday isn't necessarily something that could last. And to have some level of caution there. And I think there has to be some tracking of rent, because federal workers, one of the most common things, I speak with a lot of coworkers of mine, and federal workers, tended to live outside of the DC area. And for the last couple of months with the RTO, they're making super commutes, commuting from all across the DC area, because they weren't necessarily linked to the federal office building they worked at. And particularly DoD workers who work at the Pentagon, there's going to be a lot of people moving into the area and tracking rental prices, for property management companies in the area that, I think we do have to be wary of, significant increases in rent, within the next couple of months, as, people's levels of flexibility have reduced drastically, and people get tired of, extremely long commutes from, Annapolis and Baltimore and, Gaithersburg, people that, that found themselves, kind of, starting a job and they're not able to, to have that level of flexibility they bought into, that are changing their lives drastically. And I think that's going to be, I think we have to encourage levels of flexibility among, property management companies that own these these properties, that these leasing companies. I think making sure that, options are available for workers who are let go, and, they're not trapped in a lease that, they're not able to make their obligations for.
Hey, thanks, Alex.
That was very well said, Alex. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're hearing we don't have a lot of data yet. There are some, the return to work is actually probably going to be a positive and maybe a mitigation toward some of these job losses and lease losses. But we'll have to see how things go going forward. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. All right. Well, we're at time. Our next meeting will be in June, and Matt, you recall when it is? It the 17th? Or...
June 16th. So I think it's also a Monday.
Okay. All right. So our next meeting will be in June 16th, virtual, and we will see you then. Two actions I'm carrying. One is we're going to write an email on the Art 43, and then we're going to have an inquiry to the town manager respond on status of community benefits. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone.